Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier, and this is Ship Updates. And of course, we are in the final month of Q1, which means 3.1 is at the end of the month. Now, of course, on today's RTV, it was very much heavy into the production side of the game, so probably not the subject matter that a lot of people would immediately go, oh my god, the production side, let's hear about that. They talked about different techniques for having meetings, and most people would probably go like, not really my cup of tea. But it was very interesting because it did kind of give you a lot of information on the structure of how they're going for things and how they're setting their goals. And it really kind of fed into the whole production roadmap. Now, of course, a lot of us might look at the production roadmap and say, okay, well, this is kind of like, these are the goals that we intend to hit this year. And some of us from experience might say, well, we know that those goals are kind of fluid, right? I mean, and I'm not trying to say that in kind of a disparaging way, but we know how things have gone in the past and how certain things have they slide from one goal to, let's say from one date to another. And we've had that experience, but what we found out in today's, reverse the verse, sorry, not calling all devs, was that is very much a live, Jira production update. That what you're seeing is very much live. And of course, if you look at the 4 ships which are scheduled for 3.1, which are of course the Reclaimer, the Tumbril Cyclone, the Aegis Terrapin, and the Misk Razor. When you see these ships and you look at them on the roadmap and they'll say amount of tasks to be completed, that is very much the live update or the current live update at that time of how much further they have to go to get these ships in 3.1. And so even if you look at them right now, they're all about roughly about 2/3 completed. Based on a meeting on Monday, they might then again leap ahead a certain amount. Still 30 days to go, and it looks like all of them are on schedule, though I kind of feel like I did kind of detect a hint of maybe there's a little bit more work to be done on the Reclaimer. Now, of course, the Reclaimer is the biggest and the most complex of all these ships. And there was nothing definite said like, oh, we're running into some issues with animations or textures or just getting it all to work together. Oh, we don't know yet. But the Reclaimer, of course, requires certain changes to Olisar to even be playable in the PU. So there's a lot that kind of hangs onto the Reclaimer being in 3.1, that this would be probably the ship that would require the most, not only just work in terms of bringing this ship into the game, but also work that needs to be done in the game itself to bring this ship in. So this is probably the ship that has the most tied to it to get into 3.1. So if there is a ship that's likely to miss, it would probably be the Reclaimer, though truthfully, I mean, with salvage on the roadmap for 3.2, if the Reclaimer did miss 3.1 and did end up landing in 3.2, at least it would land with its salvage system. So I mean, kind of a silver lining there if it does indeed miss. And though nothing definite was ever said that the Reclaimer would indeed miss 3.1, even as someone who has owned the Reclaimer since the day it was originally concept sold, someone who is very enthusiastic about it, I do have to allow for the fact that I have to be honest about it and say, like, if there is a ship that would miss 3.1, it would be the Reclaimer. It's the one that has the most tacked onto it, the most things that it's dependent on to actually make it into the persisting universe. So hopefully not, fingers crossed, but yeah, that is a possibility, certainly with the Reclaimer. Now, there is one thing coming up on Monday that probably, you know, it would affect a lot of different ship owners in the game, but one group probably more than others. The Aegis Hammerhead and its owners have a lot invested in a ship whose primary weapons are turrets. And so on Monday's Calling All Devs, they are going to be answering or at least a question in regards to the AI operation of ship turrets. So there's probably quite a few of you out there who are very much invested in this answer, not just Aegis Hammerhead owners, but pretty much anyone who owns a ship like this one here, the Caterpillar, which have, you know, basically ship turrets as its only means of weapons, or as a substantial expression, if you will, of the firepower of their ships. Will probably want to tune into Calling All Devs on Monday. Of course, I'll be probably commentating on that answer on Monday as well, to get some kind of information on that ship system, or at least that game system, because there's quite a few ships that are pretty heavily invested in that. Now, in general, with most ships, one of the more difficult things to do in the game is landing in the dark, especially when the site is not an actual landing site. And recently, we've seen, certainly on Calling All Devs and on Reverse the Verse, they've talked a little bit about the environment team, the lighting, and in all honesty, in terms of physical beauty, in terms of rendering something that looks real, that looks very well done and very well polished, I think that the environments, especially when you're kind of landing on a planet in the dark, are really great to look at, are really realistic, and in a way, I kind of don't want them to change. You know what I mean? Like, when you look at this scene and you see yourself kind of going into the landing site and it's in a darkened area, I kind of don't want this to be taken away from the game. And so recently on Calling All Devs, when they were talking about it, you know, there was some good stuff in there. It seemed to be more focused on FPS. Well, you know what? I'll play the clip for you.
Question, Johnny. Is the darkness meant to be explored as is, or are there other systems such as night vision, ambient lighting tricks, better flashlights, etc. going to be implemented? Now,
okay.
We talked
Sorry,
a little bit about this on RTV a couple weeks ago, I think.
Yes, I believe Todd mentioned this on RTV, yeah. So, yeah, obviously, like, the environment's still in development in a lot of areas. It might keep changing here and there, but there are definitely options we can look into to make darker areas a bit more kind of accessible and a bit easier to see and be able to get around a bit better. So whether or not that would be on the helmet, or we don't know yet, but we've definitely discussed things like that for weapon attachments, which is a system that we're currently working on as part of the Weapon 2.0 system. So the ability to swap and change out attachments, and with that will come investigation into things that we can do there. So, you know, infrared, like heat, night vision, things like that, but nothing written in stone just yet.
Right. Yeah. When we were talking about with Todd on RTV, you know, you mentioned it's one of those things. We've certainly got options, but it's one of those things where you want to wait until the environmental team is happy with their work, because you don't want to have to cut this and then they change this and you got to change this and then you got this. It's like that. So obviously we've seen lots of lighting passes on things like OSR and Grimhex, and that applies to everything. So when we have the environment, you know, probes and everything where we want them, then we can certainly look into something like that.
Now, in the context of that clip, they seem to be mostly talking in an FPS realm. But when you look at the world of Star Citizen, there are a lot of kind of issues around cockpit views and certainly being able to see in the dark. Now, if I were outside of a well-lit area, all the rocks that are on the ground are still there. They're still basically being rendered. They're still there. They're just not being shown to me because the ambient light isn't enough for me to see them. So especially if you're on a planet like Delamar and you're flying close to the ground, there are large kind of like rocky spikes or mineral spikes, whatever, that are sticking up out of the ground that you can't see in the dark, because, you know, either the sort of the rim of your MFDs and your cockpit are so high up in your view that it kind of occludes everything that's kind of down in front of you, so you can't really see, and plus it's in the dark as well sometimes, so that can prevent you from being able to see, you know, very critical parts of the terrain that may help you navigate when you're flying at low level or land, especially in the dark. So it kind of takes the issue of, you know, the cockpit views in a lot of these ships not being the best. It kind of magnifies that problem, especially when you're flying around in the dark. But there is kind of a solution that kind of kills two birds with one stone, and it deals with, when they're talking about thermal imaging, it kind of plays into that thing that they can do, that they've discussed, and that's helmet mounted displays. Now, helmet mounted displays are something that is off the shelf technology today. I mean, you can go out and you can buy a drone and you can buy an infrared camera for that drone now. This is something that even in the Star Citizen universe, which is set 1,000 years from now, if it's off the shelf now, you have to figure that it's fairly pedestrian technology 1,000 years from now. And having something like this in the game is something that, you know, this is a helmet that you could go out and buy at, say, Olisar or Levski or wherever you intend to do your shopping in the PU. And this is something that you could either attach to your existing flight helmet, or maybe it's a specific type of flight helmet, and this would allow you to see in the dark. But not only that, this is something that you could use to kind of see over or past your MFDs in your ship. So where you're operating a ship that has some cockpit view issues because of the MFDs or because of how the cockpit's been built out, this kind of nullifies that problem, because it would allow you to see beyond those things. So you would be much more aware of certain navigational hazards or certain combat hazards, while still preserving the basic structure of what the artist has created for the cockpit, whether it was, you know, shall we say, beneficial or detrimental to the operation of that ship. This would be, of course, something that is, you know, you would opt into this. This is a helmet that you would go buy at Levski, or an add-on for your ship that you would go buy at Olisar or whatever. This is something that a pilot isn't forced to take. This is something that they can take. This is an option that's available to them, but it kind of kills two birds with one stone. It allows you to operate your ship at low level on the dark side of a moon, or maybe in an asteroid field like the Rings of Yela. If you're flying around through the dark side of the planet, maybe certain asteroids aren't immediately visible to you. This would help, but this is not something that you would have to get. This is something that you would opt into. So if you still want to see the world in its kind of natural state like this, and kind of still see that beauty, it's still there. This is just something that you can flick on when you need it. And I think this would be something that I would really like to see brought into Star Citizen. I think that from a technological point of view, I mean, CIG has already kind of revealed that this is something that they can do, and it's something that would make sense in the Star Citizen universe, and it kind of kills two birds with one stone. So it's something that I would like to see CIG talking about in the future, and something that I would like to see people kind of, you know, talking about back and forth on the forums, because I think this is something that would really help out the game, and maybe even increase immersion to a certain degree of having this option available to you. But anyways, that's where I'm going to leave it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.